Okay, so I'm going to call it that I have finished my 9th frame. I know where I want it to end up. And so now I have 9 frames. They're all in their individual folders. The progression goes like this. And I've met the requirements of the assignment. There's definitely a transformation that happens. There's definitely, it starts with something I created in class, or it includes something I created in class, actually quite a few things. But I'm not happy with some of the jumps, like that jump. Still don't love it to that jump. And I think, honestly, it's just the color of the cloak. Because it goes from lighter than the skin to all of a sudden darker than the skin, even though it goes in between these two. And I understand why I did it, but it's not my favorite. And then this jump is a little bit kind of crazy in the color jump as well. So now I can start thinking, well, how can I kind of soften those transitions? Because I like how it's transitioning at the end. From like 6 on, that's pretty smooth. And from 5 on, it's pretty smooth. So what I can do is I can actually duplicate the layers, move them underneath, and make them what are called tweens. So this is now a frame that will go between frame 1 and frame 2, because I've identified it as being tricky. And a really simple way to transition is just to take your opacity down on that full folder, right? And it depends on what you're animating. So it would go from this to this to this. And you see how that kind of smooths it a little bit. Now it's weird because it's so kind of transparent, right? Because I have that size change. But when it moves fast, it's not a keyframe, it's just to help the animation. That will make more sense. And then if I do that same thing here, so I make a duplicate of frame 3, move it underneath, rename it frame 2.5 as a tween. So these are not my keyframes. And then I'm just going to take its opacity down to around 60. And so then it goes from this to this to this, which just runs smoother. And then between 3 and 4, I can do the same thing. I've kind of set it up as an expectation in the viewer now. Whoops, it nested. I didn't want it to nest, just wanted to move under. And then this is going to be 3.5 tween. And I can play with that opacity. Now, not only can you play with opacity, you can play with color fills, you can play with lots of other just subtle changes to help smooth your transitions. Now that transition's pretty smooth. Then that one's a little strong, so I'm going to create copy there. So I'm just making lots of little tweens, but I'm not making huge changes to them. I'm just transitioning their opacity. So this is 5.5 tween. And I'll show you an example of one of my art process animations, which is something I use digital art to do a lot. So I take photos of work, traditional artwork, while I'm making it, and then I'll make a little process animation of it. This might need another one as well. So it still feels like a big jump from this to that to me. So I might make another duplicate of it. And so then it would be 5.33 and 5.66, because we're basically splitting this into thirds now instead of halves. Throw some irrational numbers at you. And now I just want to take this one up. It was at 80%, now it's going to be at 90%. Just because the color of that cloak is so strong. What I might need to do is merge these. Yeah, there's so much in there. These are big layers. So to save memory, I'm just going to select all of them within that folder and then say layer merge. And then if I duplicate it, let's see, let's make a copy of this one. Let's merge it, bring that in. There we go. Take the opacity down. Yeah, that will give me what I'm looking for. Sometimes you have to troubleshoot it a little bit. So from there to there to there to there. And I think I can probably get away with this one being actually, I don't think I need this one. There we go. Now, because these tweens are at lower opacities, it means you also have to have the layer underneath it turned on for them to work. Because you don't want your animation to suddenly fade out and be less opaque. But now I think I have the tweens I need. It's a good time to save it. And now I'm ready to play with the background, right? So far I've just had gray. So what I can do is I can do a Google search, and I can target the Google search in tools to be a GIF. And I'm looking at fire backgrounds. And I found this one that I like quite a bit. It's not huge, but that's okay. It's kind of like a texture overlay. So I'm going to open that image in a new tab. And I'm going to save it, drag and drop it to my folder. There it is. Now I'm going to open that in Photopea, a GIF. You don't have to do this. This is optional, but it's how you can composite and integrate GIF animations. And we touched on it in last class, but it would be nice just to demonstrate it fully. So I'm going to open this GIF asset from online. And all the copyright stuff applies to animated files just like it does to still files. But you see how it will bring all those different frame layers, way more frames than I'm animating with, right? It puts them all into a folder just like we did. Now I'm going to drag that folder and drop it onto my assignment. Then I'm going to move that folder down into my background folder on top of the gray. And then I'm going to move it, Control T, stretch it, fill my space with it. And I can even put a layer style on it if I want. I can say, I want this to lighten the background, right? Or I want it to overlay with the background. I'm going to try soft light, so it's a little bit more subtle. Yeah. And then I'm going to put some layer styles on my background too. It could be a blue sky, it can be a gradation, but I don't really love the solid gray. So I'm going to do a red that I take down to a lower opacity. Then I'm going to put a gradient overlay on it. And let's see, let's do something warm to cool. Okay. And then I can get away with something a little bit stronger. Yeah, let's get more color in this gradation. Yeah, I like that. And then I'm going to dissolve it. So it's just a little grainy. Something like that. All right. I'll push this to 66. Okay, so I've got my background. I could have a still background, so the background just always looks like this, but what's brilliant about bringing in animated assets is I can just jump. Right now that one's turned on. And so for frame 1, I'm going to have that one turned on and frame 1 turned on. And I'm going to start outputting my animation frames as JPEGs. So I turn off everything except my background and my frame 1. Right? And then I say File, Export as JPEG. This is going to flatten everything. I want 100% quality. Why not? Save. I want to make sure I know where it's saving to. It's saving to downloads. Now I'm going to go to the next one, which is 1.5. But in order for 1.5 to work, I need to have 1 also turned on. Otherwise, it's transparent, right? So this is one of my tweens. Then I'm just going to jump my background, move it forward, and then export this as a JPEG. I wish you could animate this. And in Photoshop you can kind of write meta programs. But it's good to just see each step and to practice it with your hands each time. Okay, now I'm going to do number 2, and here I can turn off the ones behind, right? Like that little tidbit right there is going to show unless I turn off the frames behind. And then in the background, I see the ones I've already used. I leave those turned on because this background is kind of layering on itself. And I'm going to jump a little bit more. And now then I save that. So this is where all the organization pays off, because you understand what goes into each component and you can trust it. And I can see in my downloads, these are all numbered. So it goes from 0 here to 1 to 2. And you see how those are starting to look more like animation frames. The progression is a little smoother. Okay, for the tween, I need to have both of them turned on, and then I turn on another background, jump ahead a little bit, File, Save As, or Export As, excuse me, JPEG. And I jump forward a little bit, and I turn on this, and I turn off the ones behind it, and I export as a JPEG. And if this were a cooking show, I would then take the finished piece out of the oven because you know all the steps that go in. But I'm showing it to you in real time. So we are just watching the thing being baked, doing these individual steps. Because it's a tween, I need to leave on what's behind it. I jump ahead a little bit with the background.